We'll turn to the last speaker in our social housing community. Social housing community, which is Andy Frew from the Northern Ireland Housing Exec. Andy.
Thanks very much. I'm Andy Frew, the Housing Executive. I'm an architect and energy efficiency consultant. Next slide, please. The Northern Ireland Housing Executive, we're a social housing landlord. We have 85,000 or 86,000 existing houses, but we're also the Home Energy Conservation Authority. We have a role in that, and we promote energy efficiency for 780,000 houses in Northern Ireland. Northern Ireland's very different. We have about 500,000 houses that are heated with heating oil, a very high carbon fuel, and about half of those houses, the private ones, don't have heating controls. So that's a big issue. The issues we face as a landlord is that our rents are capped by our funding department, and we have to find kind of outside funds if we're going to improve houses. And again, we've got 30,000 of our own houses are heated by heating oil, and 3,000 are heated by electricity. And again, we've got a concern about investment. We've got an average SAP of perhaps 63, but to get up to a SAP B, we're looking at we'll be looking for £1 billion of investment. So we've got to think of smart ways to do things. This is a scheme in Northern Ireland where it was external insulation was applied, and unlike the Green Deal, we put in ventilation systems, and we're investigating smart controls for that. The architect for that was our Caroline Best in the Housing Executive. The kind of things we're looking at the minute, we're reviewing our energy strategy at the same time as the Northern Ireland government is reviewing its energy strategy. The kind of things we're thinking of is insulation first. It always works. It works for a long time. It's also compatible with installing heat pumps perhaps later after electricity tariffs have been reformed. We've got a lot of issues with oil systems. We've got oil spillage. We've got people spill oil as they're trying to perhaps pour little tanks of oil into their oil tank, and remediation for that costs tens of thousands of pounds every year. So we're interested in alternatives to that. And again, if we're going to decarbonise a lot of rural properties, the issue of the grid comes into play. We've got kind of a stringy, long, extended electricity grid, so we don't necessarily want to add a lot of loads to the extremities. So we were thinking of perhaps insulating those houses first. And again, because we have so many existing houses, I think all of our houses have hot water cylinders. So we're kind of thinking, can we perhaps provide some of that hot water using decarbonised electricity, perhaps wind energy? And in our estates, typically, perhaps half of our houses may be sold houses. So we're interested in solutions that might come in via regulated community utilities, perhaps for community heating, a bit like gas or a bit like water. The particular issue, next slide, in Ireland is that we're getting a lot of wind energy. So if we look at homes and their energy demands and the heat and power system in the UK, that slide in the top right is probably a famous slide where you've got the red is the heat demands, the green is the electricity system, and the electricity system will need to get a lot bigger if it's going to meet those heat demands, or we can insulate, and we prefer to insulate because it makes houses warmer and drier even without any energy. And also insulated houses match the local wind energy resource, at least on a monthly basis. So that's the wind energy resource. Again, if we look at the wind energy resource and heating demands, this little graph here has the days you need most heat on the left, and the days you need least heat on the right, and the bit below the lines is where you need hot water, and the little dots are wind energy. So we're kind of thinking how much of those hot water demands, of those heating demands, can be met with can be met with wind energy. Next slide. And that little graph on the left, it shows that actually we have lots of full wind energy output in relatively few days. So you're not going to provide batteries for that. You're not going to store that. So we're thinking of using it directly, perhaps to heat hot water, perhaps to make the houses drier, but also long-term thermal storage that can store heat, perhaps for a few weeks in community heating systems. That's of interest to us, something they do in Denmark. And again, on the right there, that grid shows that there's always, most of the time, there's actually space on the grid to distribute wind energy. But again, that'll need reform to electricity tariffs, perhaps interruptible tariffs. And again, we're upgrading the grid. We'll be upgrading the grid for EVs and heat pumps, but every time we upgrade the grid, we expect it to last about 30 years, and there's going to be space in that grid which could be used by distributing heat for heating hot water or for things like that. So it could be underused for years. And whenever we look at carbon emissions, why are we interested in this? To decarbonize houses, if we can perhaps provide a percentage of the annual hot water load, the heating load, using perhaps renewable electricity, we can kind of decarbonize our 85,000 houses. We can start with that rather quickly. But also the ones with the very low emissions are at the bottom. You can look at these slides later to get the detail. But the things that have very low emissions are things like community heat systems that have very big heat pumps, as they're doing in Glasgow, and some kind of thermal storage. And some of those things can be externally financed and also available to private owners and landlords. Next slide. And again, because we have very little money, we're interested in what can be part funded, things like PV, and perhaps getting paid for electricity grid operators for changing systems. And again, microgrids could be a possibility, but that's kind of on a case-by-case basis. We're interested in something that would enable people to pay for oil bit by bit, so perhaps they were less inclined to get little oil tanks and spill the oil. And again, to inform the case for external investment, we need better data. We need data on temperatures when people are using heat, and also humidity, because it can lead to damp and mold in houses, and we really don't want that. Next slide, please. Wind and solar energy. Solar energy and batteries are kind of oversold in our view to an extent, because in the depth of winter, there's very little sunshine about. But actually, winter wind outputs are quite high. Both renewable energy systems have quite a lot of energy available in the afternoons, which is good for social housing. We've got more people at home. But for example, if the wind blows at night, we need smart automatic controls to make better use of variable grid electricity. So we need those smart systems. Next slide. And again, this is a slide from the electricity grid operator. Next slide. They can switch things on and off to regulate the grid. So we've got wind energy, we can store it in hot water cylinders. We can also provide ordinary gas radiators or oil central heating radiators with an electric element, so we can switch between the two. But these oil tanks in Northern Ireland are, you can look at them as a seasonal energy store. There's as much energy, there's as much thermal energy in those as say 100 Teslas or 200 Nissan Leafs. So we're interested in perhaps slowing down the rate at which we use that heating oil. And to interact with wind energy in the grid, hybrids are quite a promising solution to deal with peak grid demands. We just switch the boiler on. Next slide. Shared heat sources, again, an interesting system because we've got difficulties putting air source heat pumps in terms of planning permission, that kind of thing. So these systems are interesting to us. We've got a lot of water in Northern Ireland, a lot of lakes, a lot of groundwater, so we can perhaps use those systems. The pipes in the ground can be plastic, so that can be more economic to distribute around, for example, suburban areas. Next slide. Systems for Cities, we think there's potential to use those, especially in historic areas where it's going to be difficult to insulate those houses. We're also probably going to get resistance from private landlords to spending a lot on insulation, and there's the disruption. So we think community heating, ideally as a regulated utility to lower the cost of finance, has a lot of potential. Next slide. And in Denmark, they've gone for it big time, where they just build heat reservoirs. Next slide. Data has a huge potential to inform what we do in terms of future heating systems. For example, what tolerance do people already have for varying temperatures? When do they put their heat on? Because that's going to show the potential for example, preheating houses with renewable electricity directly as it's available, and then perhaps that will suppress people's activation of fossil fuel systems. How much heat that's provided to houses is actually for drying, because if it's for drying, it can be provided perhaps at night or at different times to coincide with the availability of renewable electricity. And how much can be used with, much value can be added by directing heat to exactly the rooms where it's needed. People want more heat in living rooms. We did a trial of zone control, and we found that people were only heating the upstairs perhaps 20% of the time. And again, getting that data off-site enables you to control the systems to make better use of electricity, but also you can analyze that data to inform, for example, health investment. Next slide. So in an insulated house, energy that you put in early is still worth something. It preheats the house, it makes it feel warmer. Our houses are usually heavyweight blockwork, which is quite a lot of heat retention capacity. So that's something that's of interest to us, and that's certainly what will be done with a heat pump anyway. You don't want to be switching a heat pump on and off. So if you like, we'd like to get people used to the idea of accepting energy at times other than the normal off-on heating periods. And again, we need better thermostats to control, to know what the temperature is in the house, to know when preheating is worthwhile. Next slide. Yes, so the energy service of the future, we think there's a big role for data, because, and if you're using renewable electricity in kind of almost like an uncontrolled way, you want to kind of reassure people that they've been delivered something. So you'll need to be able to tell them afterwards what was delivered, how much drier their house was, how much warmer their house was, how much the energy cost. So in terms of developing an energy service for the future, it needs the data, to be off-site, and it needs that feedback. And again, people will need to agree to share that data. So data feedback is huge potential in that. And lastly, I'll just leave you with this slide for if you're a potential supplier. As a social housing landlord, we need stuff to be reliable and last a long time. And we ideally would like to reuse the stuff that we've got already. We have hot water cylinders in all of our houses, practically all of our houses. So we'd like to use those systems. And we want to have systems that are validated, ideally included in SAP or with third-party testing. And again, we've got quite onerous tendering requirements as a public body, so we have to watch ourselves there. Thanks very much.